There are crimes so monstrous, so inhumane, that they shake the very foundations of our faith in humanity. The murder of Sylvia Likens was one such horror, a tragedy carved into the annals of human cruelty. But let us not be mere spectators of horror. Let us step beyond the repulsion, beyond the anger, and ask ourselves, what can we learn from this abyss? How do we, as individuals, as a society, rise above the darkest aspects of human nature? The ancient Stoics believed that suffering is inevitable, but how we respond to it defines who we are. Today, we journey through one of the most harrowing crimes in American history, not to indulge in shock, but to find meaning in suffering. To forge resilience in the face of chaos. To understand why self-control, discipline, and an unshakable spirit are the only shields against the forces of destruction, both within us and around us. The tragedy, a lesson in human nature. In 1965, a frail and defenseless 16-year-old girl, Sylvia Likens, suffered unspeakable torture at the hands of those she trusted. Betrayed, beaten, burned, and humiliated, she endured a fate that should never befall any human being. And yet, it did. Not in some distant, primitive time, but here, in modern America. What does this tell us about human nature? That we are, at our core, capable of unspeakable evil. That civilization is but a fragile mask hiding the savage lurking beneath. The Stoics, from Marcus Aurelius to Seneca, understood that the world is neither just nor fair. It is indifferent. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. What happened to Sylvia was an external event, a manifestation of the chaos and cruelty that sometimes infect the human condition. But it is not the event itself that matters, it is how we respond to it, how we learn from it, and how we use it to forge a stronger spirit. The Stoic response: mastery over emotion. Anger is the easy response. Rage, disgust, even despair, these emotions rise effortlessly when we confront such horror. But as Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. We can allow the darkness to consume us, to fall into hatred, into a cycle of vengeance and bitterness. Or we can use this tragedy as a reminder, a brutal but necessary lesson, that evil exists, and we must stand unshaken in its presence. We must not let it corrupt our hearts. For what would justice be if we were consumed by the same emotions that led to Sylvia's suffering? What good is vengeance if it erodes our own humanity? The path of Stoicism is not one of passivity, it is one of control. We must take the outrage we feel and transmute it into action, to protect the innocent, to build a society that values virtue over cruelty, to teach resilience where there is weakness, and above all, to never let destruction breed more destruction. Overcoming darkness, the call to resilience. Tragedies like this remind us that suffering is not reserved for history books. It is real, present, and at times, unthinkable. But we are not powerless. We are never powerless. Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." If we are to honor Sylvia, if we are to rise above the basest instincts of humanity, we must not allow grief to make us weak. Instead, we must let it refine us. Harden us, not into bitterness, but into unshakable fortitude. We stand together, not as helpless witnesses to horror, but as individuals capable of shaping the world. Every moment is an opportunity to choose virtue over vice, discipline over indulgence, wisdom over rage. We cannot change the past, but we can shape the future. And the only way to do so is to master ourselves first. To temper our emotions, to find clarity in chaos, to rise, always, to rise above. That is the Stoic path. That is the path to true strength. Sylvia Likens did not deserve her fate. But her story need not be in vain. It stands as a grim warning, a lesson carved in suffering. And so we ask you, how will you respond? With rage, with despair? Or with the unyielding resolve of a mind unbroken? Let us carry this lesson forward. Let us remember that in the face of cruelty, our response is our power. And in our control over our emotions, over our actions, we find the only true justice, the unshakable strength of the human spirit. The darkness exists. But so do we. And we will not be moved.